You've just been charged, and now you're sitting there asking the one question no one prepares you for. Should you take a plea deal or fight it out in court? And let me tell you, that decision is going to shape everything that happens next. I'm John Cannon, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor here in Oklahoma, and I've helped thousands of clients navigate this exact moment. This video walks you through the real difference between a plea and a trial, the risks, the benefit, and how to know which path actually protects your future. So by the end, you're not guessing, you're making an informed decision with clarity, not fear. Criminal trial or plea deal? How do you choose the best option? Understanding the fork in the road. Let's get right to the heart of this decision. If you're facing criminal charges in Oklahoma, you're likely standing at a crossroads. The DA has made you an offer, a plea deal. Maybe it means pleading guilty to a lesser offense or agreeing to a specific punishment. On the other hand, your path is going to trial, rolling the dice before a judge or a jury. This is one of the most difficult decisions you will ever make in your life. So how do you choose the best option for your future? Let's unpack both sides, step by step, so you can make the best possible choice for you and your family. What is a plea deal really? A plea deal or plea bargain means you agree to plead guilty or no contest to a certain charge or accept a particular sentence, and in return, the prosecution gives up something too. Maybe they'll drop the most serious charges, recommend a lighter sentence, or agree to probation instead of jail or prison. It sounds simple, but there's a lot to consider before you sign your name on any plea agreement. For example, in Oklahoma, let's say you're charged with possession with intent to distribute, a felony drug charge. The DA may offer to reduce it to a misdemeanor if you plead guilty. That could mean the difference between prison and probation, or between a felony and a misdemeanor on your record. But a plea deal isn't always the right answer, and sometimes fighting in court is the best path, but it comes with risks. How strong is the evidence against you? This is the very first thing I cover with my clients after receiving discovery from Oklahoma prosecutors. How much evidence does the prosecution actually have? If the police found drugs in your car, but you were the only person with access, is that evidence rock solid or is it shaky? If your case involves eyewitnesses, are their stories changing or are they reliable? Did the officers follow proper procedures when they arrested you or searched your home? Was there a violation of your rights? Let me give you a real Oklahoma example. I had a client charged with robbery of a Brahms. The state's evidence was security camera footage and an eyewitness that showed a suspect face. The prosecutor offered a plea deal of a short prison sentence, but after looking closer, we realized the video wasn't clear enough and thought we could take on the eyewitness. We took it to trial and the jury found him not guilty. Now, if the evidence had been bulletproof, say there was clear video, fingerprints, other witnesses, that would be a different story. In cases like that, a plea deal may save you from a much harsher sentence than you could get at trial. Here's the bottom line. If the evidence is weak, you have more leverage to fight the case. If it's strong, you need to consider whether a plea deal protects you from the risk of going to trial. What are the possible penalties if you go to trial? Another huge piece of the puzzle is understanding what you're risking if you turn down a plea from the government. Oklahoma law sets very specific punishments for each different crime, and sometimes the penalty at trial can be higher than what's offered in a plea. For example, let's say you're accused of second-degree burglary. In Oklahoma, that can mean years in prison. But the offer from the DA is probation and no jail time if you plead guilty. I see tons of folks who don't realize how serious the penalties can be at trial. Maybe you're angry, or you're sure the charges are unfair. But if you roll the dice at trial and lose, the judge has to follow the law if the jury is harsh, and you could face the maximum punishment. So ask yourself, am I willing to risk the higher punishment if things don't go my way? Is the plea offer something I can live with, or is it just too harsh to accept? What are the long-term consequences? It's not just about jail or probation. You need to think about your life after the case is over. For example, a felony conviction in Oklahoma can take away your right to vote, own a firearm, or work in certain jobs. Even some misdemeanors can mess up your job, your housing, or your ability to get student loans. Pleading guilty, even to a lesser charge, will still go on your record. Let's say you're a young person charged with marijuana possession. If you accept a plea deal, that involves a drug conviction that could follow you for years. On the other hand, if you have a clean record and that plea deal lets you avoid jail and keep your job, it might be worth considering. Sometimes your attorney can negotiate for a deferred sentence in Oklahoma. That means that you enter your plea now, but the sentencing date is set off. If you're successful in probation, the case is dismissed and may fall off your record forever. It's important to keep in mind that your defense attorney must negotiate for you to get a deferred sentence in your case. Always weigh what life will look like 5 or 10 years down the road. Will you regret having something on your record that could have been avoided with a win at trial? Or will you be glad you avoided the risk of the highest penalty? How does your personal situation factor in? Every person is different. What really matters to you? Do you have a job you can't afford to lose? Are you the main provider for your family? Do you have immigration concerns, or are you already on probation for something else? For example, I had a client who was a single mom. She was charged with felony theft in Oklahoma. The DA offered a plea deal that would put her on probation with fines, but would mean a felony conviction. If she lost a trial, she risked real prison time and losing custody of her kids. In her situation, the risk of trial was just too much. Thankfully, we were able to negotiate a deferred sentence, and she kept her job and her family together. But sometimes clients can't accept anything on their record, maybe because of a professional license or immigration status. In those cases, even a decent plea offer might not be good enough. The risk of trial are high, but the cost of pleading guilty are even higher. You need to take your own life, your future, and your family into account, not just the legal facts of your case. What's the real story with plea bargains in Oklahoma? Let's talk about how plea deals actually work in Oklahoma courts. Most criminal cases, just like everywhere else in the country, end with some kind of plea deal. Prosecutors are busy, courts are crowded, and many cases get wrapped up without a trial. Some people worry that taking a plea deal makes them look guilty when they aren't, or that it means giving up their rights. Pleading guilty to a lesser charge isn't always a defeat if you are still eligible to get the charge and arrest removed from your criminal record in the future. Sometimes it's the smartest way to move on with your life. On the other hand, sometimes prosecutors offer weak deals because they know their case isn't strong. I've seen cases where the state's evidence was paper thin, but they still hoped the threat of trial would push someone into a plea agreement. If you're offered a plea, ask your lawyer these questions. Is this deal better than what is likely to happen at trial? Is the state's case weak enough that we could win? Are there alternatives like a deferred sentence that might help me in the long run? And most important, is the offer being made to me eligible to be removed from my record in the future? Also, remember that in Oklahoma, certain crimes like violent felonies or federal crimes have mandatory sentences. Prosecutors might not be able to offer much of a deal, or the judge may not have much flexibility. It's important to understand what's possible and what's not. How do you actually make the choice? Here's how I guide my clients through this decision. Step 1, we break down the evidence, piece by piece. We look for weak spots. Did the police mess up? Are witnesses unreliable? Is there a legal defense that we can use? Step 2, we talk honestly about the risk of trial and likely punishments. If you are facing a huge penalty, you need to know what that risk is. Step 3, we look at your life, your job, your family, and your future. What can you live with? What is absolutely unacceptable to you? Step 4, we compare the DA's offer to the likely outcome at trial. Is it fair? Is it harsh? Can we negotiate for something better? Step 5, we make sure you understand every consequence, not just the time behind bars, but what happens to your rights, your record, and your opportunities. And then you make the choice. Not me, not the prosecutor, not the judge. You, because it's your life, your family, and your future. A quick word about trials. If you choose to go to trial, you need to be ready for a fight. Trials can be stressful, they can take time, and there are no guarantees. It is a living, breathing thing. But sometimes they're necessary to clear your name or to protect your future. I always tell clients, the courtroom is where we level the playing field. In Oklahoma, you're innocent until proven guilty. If the state can't prove you did it beyond a reasonable doubt, you walk free at trial. Today, we broke down the fork in the road you're facing, trial or plea deal. We talked about the strengths of the evidence, the possible penalties, your long-term future, your personal situation, and how plea deals really work in Oklahoma. Want to learn more about fighting back? Don't miss our next video, Assault on Public Servants, How to Beat Your Criminal Case. This is a must-watch if you want to protect your rights and avoid the biggest pitfalls in Oklahoma courtrooms. See you over there.